Picture a normal neighborhood, neatly trimmed hedges, kids riding bikes, the kind of street where everyone waves at each other without thinking twice. And in the middle of that quiet English life stands a pale, ordinary house with a chipped front door, 25 Cromwell Street. To the neighbors, it belonged to a friendly couple, Fred and Rose West, a hard-working handyman and a loving mother of many kids. They were always smiling, always polite. Nothing about them seemed unusual. But behind that door, behind those walls, people entered and never came back out. For almost 2 decades, the house held secrets darker than anything the police had ever seen. To this day, investigators still describe it as one of the most disturbing discoveries in British history. And the scariest part? None of it started with a plan. It started with a relationship. 2 broken people who should have never crossed paths. But when they did, their shared darkness didn't cancel out. It multiplied. And the moment they met, the countdown began. Fred West grew up learning one rule: power keeps you safe. He never understood love, only control. From a young age, he pushed people away with his temper, then pulled them back in with charm. Everything had to belong to him. Objects, money, people, especially people. By the time he reached adulthood, Fred had already crossed lines most people don't even think about. The world became something to bend, manipulate, and reshape to his desires. Then came Rose. Rose wasn't searching for trouble. She was searching for stability. Her childhood was cold and unpredictable. Love in her home came with fear, commands, and consequences. She didn't learn affection, she learned obedience. When Fred and Rose met, it wasn't romance, it was recognition. Fred saw someone he could shape. Rose saw someone who paid attention to her, obsessively. Most people would have seen warning signs, but to them, those signs felt familiar, comfortable. Together, they reinforced each other's worst instincts. What Fred wanted, Rose justified. What Rose suggested, Fred acted on. And soon, their relationship was no longer about love. It was about control. But their toxic bond wouldn't stay contained between the 2 of them. When they moved into a new house on Cromwell Street, everything escalated. When Fred and Rose moved into 25 Cromwell Street, everything changed. Up until then, their relationship was intense, unhealthy, and controlling, but contained. Cromwell Street gave them something new: privacy. The house was bigger than anything they had lived in before. Multiple floors, a basement, rooms they could remodel without anyone questioning why. And Fred wasted no time turning it into his creation. He started renovating immediately, knocking down walls, digging into the basement, adding new rooms. To the neighbors, he was just a handyman working on his own home. Every noise, drills, saws, hammering, no one thought twice. Because why would they? Everyone knew Fred as the friendly fixer-upper. Soon, they began renting out rooms. A steady rotation of tenants and lodgers came and went, mostly young people with unstable lives, students, travelers, people the world didn't really track. To the outside world, it looked like a lively, full house. But inside, there was one rule. Fred decided who stayed. Rose decided what happened to them. The flow of people gave them something terrifying: opportunity without suspicion. If someone suddenly disappeared, no one knew if they had left willingly or if something else had happened. And the constant noise of home improvement meant Fred could hide anything: walls, floors, even the basement. Neighbors sometimes noticed strange sounds late at night. One tenant claimed she heard screams, but Rose laughed it off, saying her children were just acting out. People wanted to believe her. It's easier to ignore a red flag than to accept that evil might be living next door. And behind closed doors, the power dynamic between Fred and Rose shifted. Rose wasn't just following Fred anymore. She was leading. She wanted control. She wanted to be feared. Fred realized the person he once wanted to shape was now shaping him. What started as renovations became something else entirely. The house wasn't just shelter anymore. It was their ecosystem, their hunting ground, their secret. But the most disturbing part was still to come, because their obsession with control wouldn't stay focused on strangers. It was about to turn inward. The outside world saw a busy, chaotic household with too many kids and too little space. But behind closed doors, Fred and Rose ran the house like a dictatorship. Control wasn't just a habit anymore. It became their identity. Visitors noticed that the children never relaxed around their parents. They flinched at every raised voice, every sharp movement. But Rose always had an explanation ready. They're just acting up. They're difficult. They need discipline. Fred enforced the rules, but Rose enforced the fear. She didn't just support Fred's dominance, she escalated it. Rose began treating the house like a kingdom where she made the laws, and everyone else existed to serve her needs. Former lodgers later described her as calculated, cold, and disturbingly calm, especially when it came to controlling others. The kids weren't just ignored, they were tools, objects for power, evidence of control, proof that no one inside the house had any freedom. Teachers began to worry. One child arrived at school withdrawn, frightened, and avoiding eye contact. Another had bruises no one could explain. Social workers were notified. Reports were written. Concerns were raised. And every time, Rose had a story. She cried. She played the victim. She redirected blame. Social services backed down. Investigations closed. Fred and Rose learned something dangerous. All you need to hide the truth is a believable lie. The house continued to get busier. More renters, more noise, more secrets. But inside the home, pressure was building. It was only a matter of time before someone tried to break the silence. And when that happened, everything started to crack. Because one person, someone living under their roof, finally reached their breaking point and went to the authorities. Years of control had kept the truth sealed inside Cromwell Street. But eventually, someone broke. One of the West children, terrified, exhausted, and no longer willing to stay silent, told a school authority what life inside that house was really like. The details were shocking enough that the school immediately contacted social services. For the first time, the outside world wasn't just suspicious, it was listening. A social worker arrived at Cromwell Street unannounced. Rose tried her usual strategy: tears, excuses, emotional manipulation. Fred tried charm, jokes, friendliness, rambling explanations. But this time, the lies weren't landing. That single complaint triggered a deeper look into the family. School records, hospital visits, earlier reports that had been ignored. The more investigators dug, the stranger everything seemed. Too many stories didn't add up. Too many people had lived in the house, and then vanished. Former tenants couldn't be traced. Some neighbors mentioned hearing intense arguments and screaming at odd hours. And then, during questioning, one of the children slipped. She mentioned that her older sister, Heather, had gone missing. Fred and Rose claimed Heather had moved away to work at a boarding school. They even joked about her being a problem child. But when authorities tried to contact Heather, no school had records of her. No employer had paperwork. No social security number was active. No travel history. Nothing. It was like she had vanished off the face of the earth. Police came back with more questions. This time, Fred panicked. Not outwardly, but internally. He changed his story, then changed it again. Rose refused to speak at all, and investigators noticed something else. Fred had recently made renovations in the backyard. Those renovations matched the time frame Heather disappeared. Police got a warrant. They returned to Cromwell Street, but this time they weren't there to talk. They were there to dig. And what they found didn't just open a case. It blew open an entire history of secrets that no one could have imagined. When the first section of the yard was dug up, everything changed. The officers expected maybe a missing person lead, some documents, anything to confirm whether Heather had left willingly. They did not expect what they found. It wasn't just a disappearance anymore. It wasn't a runaway case. It was evidence. Evidence that couldn't be explained away by Fred's charm or Rose's emotional manipulation. Evidence that proved someone in that house wasn't just lying. They were hiding something irreversible. From that moment, the investigation exploded. Police expanded the search to the garden, then the basement, then other parts of the property. Each new discovery forced the investigation to widen further. Former tenants were tracked down. Old case files were pulled out of archives. Every name that had come through that house became a thread to follow. Fred and Rose were taken into custody separately. And that's when the pact between them, the bond that had fueled everything, started to crumble. Fred cracked first. He tried to take all the blame. He claimed Rose had nothing to do with anything. He portrayed her as innocent, even fragile. But investigators noticed something. Every time Rose's name came up, Fred panicked. Meanwhile, Rose had a completely different strategy. Silence. She refused to look at Fred, refused to speak to him, refused to defend him. The woman who once fed his ego and encouraged his darkest impulses now acted like he didn't exist. Fred realized something devastating. The one person he thought would stand with him was protecting only herself. And when Fred finally understood, Rose wasn't going to take the fall. He changed his story. Suddenly, it wasn't his idea. It wasn't his plan. He started pointing fingers back at Rose. Their relationship, once fueled by shared control and dominance, was now collapsing under the weight of fear and self-preservation. The investigators didn't need a confession anymore. Their lies were contradicting each other so much that the truth revealed itself. The perfect partnership was over, but the consequences of that fracture would lead to an ending no one saw coming, not even Fred. Once the case became national news, Fred and Rose were no longer just suspects. They were the most infamous couple in Britain. Reporters camped outside the courthouse. Neighbors were questioned on live television. Everyone wanted to understand how something so horrifying could hide behind such a normal facade. Fred and Rose were held separately, and investigators watched their behavior closely. Fred wrote letters to Rose from his cell, dozens of them. He begged her to stay loyal. He told her they shared a connection no one else could understand. He convinced himself that their twisted bond still existed. Rose never replied. Instead of clinging to the relationship that had defined her entire identity, Rose detached emotionally, almost instantly. She acted as though Fred was a stranger. Detectives noticed something especially chilling. Whenever Fred's name was mentioned, Rose showed zero reaction. No tears, no anger, no nostalgia, nothing. It was as if the relationship had never happened. Fred, realizing he had been abandoned by the only person who understood him, spiraled. The control he once held over Rose, over the house, over everything, was completely gone. And when he understood that Rose was going to let him face everything alone, Fred made a final decision. Before he could stand trial, he took his own life in custody. No last attempt to clear anything up. No letter explaining the truth. Just an abrupt, irreversible exit. Rose showed no emotion when she was told. Cold, detached, focused only on herself. She stood trial alone, facing multiple charges connected to what happened inside Cromwell Street. Witnesses described her as expressionless, as if she wasn't part of her own trial. The jury didn't take long. Rose West was sentenced to life, no possibility of release. She became only the second woman in modern British history to receive a sentence that harsh. But the story didn't end in that courtroom. The people of Gloucester wanted something else: closure. They wanted the house gone. Authorities agreed. 25 Cromwell Street was demolished, brick by brick, until there was nothing left. Today, it's an empty lot. No plaque, no marker. Just grass and silence. A deliberate erasure. Because the only thing more terrifying than what happened there is how ordinary the house looked while it was happening. Fred and Rose West weren't a story of love gone wrong. They were proof of something darker. Sometimes, two people don't just bring out the worst in each other. They amplify it. They didn't commit these acts for money. Not for jealousy. Not even for revenge. They did it for power. And what makes this case terrifying isn't just what they did. It's how easily they blended in. A friendly neighbor, a helpful handyman, a smiling mother. Evil isn't always loud. Sometimes it smiles at you over the garden fence. If you want more stories like this, where the truth is stranger and darker than fiction, make sure to subscribe. There are more cases, more secrets, more couples whose love turned into something dangerous. Hit subscribe so you don't miss what comes next.